I grew up in a house where rules weren't written down, they didn't need to be. You just felt them in every corner, in every glance, in every hushed word. There was an unspoken law in our home. You stayed in your place. You said what was expected. You became what they wanted. I tried to follow it. I really did. I smiled at dinner, answered questions politely, and did everything a good child was supposed to do. But deep down, a small voice whispered every night when the house was quiet, telling me I wasn't like everyone else, that I didn't belong in the mold that had been carved for me before I could even speak. It started with my sisters. They had their routines, their rituals, their laughter in front of mirrors. I watched them from a distance, pretending to do homework, but my eyes always drifted to their clothes' soft fabrics, flowing skirts, colors that seemed to glow under the light. I couldn't understand it fully, but I felt a pull inside me, a longing I was supposed to ignore. The household rule was clear. Curiosity could be dangerous. Questions were dangerous. Desires were dangerous. And yet, I couldn't stop noticing. Every time I caught them spinning in their dresses, a part of me ached to join, to try, to see myself through the same light. Then one evening, everything changed. My mother walked into my room silently, holding a box. She didn't speak at first, only set it down on my desk. The room suddenly felt smaller, heavier, filled with anticipation. "I think it's time you see this," she said, her voice calm but firm. I froze. My pulse spiked. My mind screamed to follow the rules, to step back, to do nothing. But curiosity, the same voice I had tried to ignore, urged me forward. Inside the box were clothes. Dresses, soft and delicate, in colors I had only imagined. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. My mother didn't explain. She didn't ask permission. She simply said, "If you want to understand yourself, you need to try. You need to see yourself differently." Fear collided with excitement. My hands shook as I lifted a dress, feeling its texture, imagining what it might be like to wear it. When I finally slipped it on and looked in the mirror, my reflection wasn't just a boy standing in a dress. It was someone entirely new. Someone real. Someone alive in a way I had never felt before. For the first time, I understood what it meant to break a rule, not with rebellion, but with revelation. But freedom has a way of being fragile. Just as I placed the dress back in the box, I heard the slow, deliberate footsteps of someone approaching my room. I froze, heart pounding. Whoever was coming could either accept this new version of me or shatter it completely. The footsteps grew louder, echoing in the hallway like a countdown. My heart raced, and I pressed myself against the wall, trying to make myself as small and invisible as possible. Every instinct screamed to hide, but a strange, new part of me, the part that had just tasted freedom, urged me to stay, to face this moment head-on. The door creaked open slowly. A shadow fell across the threshold, and I could make out the familiar shape of my older brother. His expression was unreadable, a mixture of curiosity and something sharper, judgment, maybe, or surprise. What is this?" he asked, voice low, almost cautious. I swallowed hard. I wanted to run, to explain, to lie, but I couldn't. Not anymore. The dress, the way I had felt in it, had unlocked something in me that couldn't be hidden again. I needed to see. I whispered, my voice shaking. I needed to see who I really am. He stepped further into the room, studying me, the dress, the box. The silence stretched unbearably long, and I could feel every heartbeat hammering in my chest. Then, unexpectedly, he smiled, not the teasing smile I feared, but something softer, almost approving. "I didn't expect that," he said, shaking his head. "But maybe it's not as strange as I thought." Relief flooded me, but it was mixed with an unexpected new fear. If he accepted it, what about the others? My parents? The rest of the house? The rules I had lived by for so long? What would they think when this became impossible to hide? Before I could process anything, a knock came at my door, sharp, insistent, deliberate. A voice from outside said, "Open up. We need to talk." My heart stopped. I realized in that instant, whatever waited outside could undo everything. or force me to confront truths I had only just begun to accept. I froze, my hand still hovering over the box as the knock came again, louder this time, more demanding. The voice outside was firm, familiar, and somehow chilling. "Open this door now. No games." I glanced at my brother, whose eyes met mine with a mixture of warning and curiosity. He said nothing, only stepped back, letting me decide. My pulse thundered in my ears. Every instinct screamed to hide, to retreat, to return to the safety of the rules I had always followed. But a part of me, the part that had felt real, alive, and unafraid for the first time, urged me forward. Slowly, I rose and approached the door, each step deliberate, my fingers trembling on the handle. When I opened it, my mother stood there, her face calm but unreadable. In her hand was a small envelope, sealed neatly. She didn't speak immediately, only held it out toward me. "This isn't just about clothes," she said finally, voice low and steady. "It's about who you are, who you want to be. You've felt it, haven't you?" I nodded, unable to speak. The truth was undeniable now, raw and powerful. She handed me the envelope. I hesitated, then took it, my hands shaking. As I broke the seal and unfolded the paper inside, I saw a single line written in my mother's careful handwriting. "To truly become yourself, you must step outside this house and leave the rules behind." The words hit me like a physical blow. Stepping outside meant exposure. It meant risk. It meant facing the world and my family in a way I had never done before. I looked up from the envelope, heart hammering, and realized my brother had vanished. And from the window, I could see someone or something watching the house, waiting. I had to choose: step forward into a life I had never dared to live, or retreat and bury this identity forever. I stood frozen by the window, the envelope clutched tightly in my hands, my mind racing. The figure outside remained still, just beyond the glass, observing every movement. I couldn't tell if it was friend or foe, just a shadow of someone waiting to test the courage I had only begun to claim. Every rule I had lived by surged back into my mind. Don't question, don't step out of line, don't be noticed. But the memory of the dress, the thrill of seeing myself truly reflected for the first time, burned hotter than any fear. I took a slow breath, feeling the weight of every suppressed desire, every hidden truth, pressing against me. For the first time, I realized that hiding had never protected me, it had only kept me from living. The envelope slipped slightly from my fingers, falling to the floor. I bent down, picked it up, and saw that inside was another note. "The world outside will challenge you in ways you cannot predict. But the only way to know yourself is to face it fully." My heart pounded harder. One step beyond that door, and everything would change. No more hiding. No more safety nets. No more household rules to contain me. I turned toward the door, hand trembling on the knob. Every fiber of my being screamed to hesitate, but another part, stronger, insistent, alive, urged me onward. I opened the door. The air outside hit me immediately. Crisp, unfamiliar, charged with possibility. And standing there, not 10 feet away, was someone I never expected to see, a stranger, yet somehow familiar, their gaze locked on me with intensity one couldn't look away from. They took a step forward and spoke, voice calm but commanding. "You've finally come. Now, the life you've avoided begins, and it will test you like nothing before." I froze, knowing that the next moment would decide everything about who I truly was and whether I could survive the transformation waiting outside. I stood rooted to the spot, the stranger's gaze burning into me. Every instinct screamed to run, but the thrill, the undeniable pull of possibility, kept me from moving. This was the moment I had been unknowingly preparing for all my life, the point where the household rules, the secrets, and the whispers of my hidden self all collided. The stranger took another step closer, their expression unreadable, but there was no threat in their posture, only expectation, as if they had been waiting for me to arrive exactly here, at this exact moment. "You've crossed the threshold," they said softly, almost like a statement rather than a question. "But crossing isn't enough. You must prove that you are willing to live as who you truly are, without hesitation or fear. My heart raced, pounding so hard it felt like it might escape my chest. The wind brushed against my face, carrying a chill that sharpened every nerve. For the first time, I realized that this wasn't just about freedom or about breaking household rules. It was about claiming my identity in a world that might not accept it. I glanced back at the house, the familiar walls that had contained me for so long. Inside, the rules, the safety, the secrecy, they were all gone now. I had made my choice to step out, and there was no turning back. I turned my eyes back to the stranger. I'm ready, I said, voice trembling but firm. They nodded once, a small, deliberate motion. Good. Then the real journey begins now. Before I could take another step, the ground beneath us shifted. Shadows rose from the street like smoke, twisting and stretching, forming shapes that seemed alive. And a voice, deep and echoing, came from nowhere and everywhere at once. Welcome to the path you chose, Daniel. But beware, the life waiting for you will demand everything and will give nothing back without a test. I froze, realizing that the world I had stepped into was far stranger, far darker, and far more challenging than I had ever imagined. The shadows writhed, stretching across the street and curling toward me like living smoke. My heart pounded so hard I thought it might burst, and every instinct screamed to retreat back into the safety of the house I had just left behind. But the part of me that had tasted freedom, the part that had seen myself for the first time, urged me forward. The stranger remained calm, almost serene, watching me as if measuring my resolve. Do not let fear dictate your steps, they said. The path ahead will test more than your courage. It will test your identity. I took a tentative step forward. The shadows recoiled slightly, as if sensing the strength behind my decision. Each movement felt like walking into another world, a place both frightening and exhilarating, where nothing familiar existed except the choices I was willing to make. Then, from the midst of the darkness, a figure emerged. Tall, imposing, and cloaked in a swirl of shadow and light. I could feel its gaze on me, and it was as if it could see through every hidden thought, every secret desire I had carried my whole life. You've stepped out of your cage, it said, voice deep and resonant. But freedom is not given, it is earned. Are you prepared to face what comes next? I swallowed hard, gripping the key I had carried from the house. Every instinct screamed yes. Every memory, every suppressed longing, pushed me forward. The figure raised its hand, and the shadows around us shifted violently, forming a doorway of darkness that seemed to lead somewhere impossible. And in that moment, I realized the journey I had chosen wouldn't just reveal who I was, it could completely reshape me. I stared at the doorway formed by the writhing shadows, a strange mixture of fear and exhilaration coursing through me. The edges of the portal flickered like liquid, twisting between darkness and light, as if the world beyond obeyed different rules entirely. Every instinct screamed to step back, but every part of me that had longed for freedom urged me forward. The tall figure's gaze held me in place. Cross carefully, it said. The path ahead will strip you down to your essence. Only by facing the parts of yourself you have hidden can you truly move forward. I swallowed hard, feeling the weight of every secret, every unspoken thought, every suppressed desire pressing against my chest. The key from the house pulsed faintly in my pocket, a reminder that this journey wasn't just about courage, it was about claiming every piece of who I was. With a deep breath, I stepped forward. The shadows enveloped me like a living fog, curling around my legs, brushing my face, tugging at my very soul. The light from the portal flickered, and I felt my heartbeat synchronize with the rhythm of the shifting darkness. Suddenly, a whisper surrounded me from all directions. Who are you, Daniel? Who have you been hiding from, and who will you become? I froze mid-step. The question wasn't rhetorical. It pierced me, reaching into every hidden corner of my identity, exposing fears I had buried for years. A sudden pull yanked me toward the center of the portal, faster than I could react. I felt myself being torn between two worlds, the familiar life I had just left behind, and an unknown reality that demanded everything of me. And then, a voice soft but commanding echoed through the shadows. Decide now, before the door closes forever. I realized in that instant that my next move would determine not just who I was, but who I could ever become. The pull of the portal grew stronger, tugging at me with a force that felt both magnetic and threatening. My feet struggled to find purchase, my lungs burned as I tried to steady myself, and yet I couldn't resist the draw. The shadows around me twisted violently, forming shapes that seemed to whisper secrets I had never dared admit, each one echoing fragments of my hidden self. The tall figure's voice cut through the chaos, calm and deliberate. Do not hesitate. Identity is forged in the moment you choose, not in the comfort you leave behind. I clenched the glowing key in my pocket, letting it anchor me as I took another step forward. The fog of shadows parted slightly, revealing a faint path ahead, lined with my reflections, each one showing a different version of me. Some were confident, radiant, and fearless. Others were anxious, uncertain, and vulnerable. A whisper rose from the center of the portal, echoing inside my mind. Choose yourself fully, Daniel, or remain trapped in the life you abandoned but could not escape. I swallowed hard, every nerve on edge. I realized that the test was not physical, it was internal. It wasn't about moving forward or backward. It was about confronting every part of me I had denied, every fear I had ignored, and every desire I had suppressed. With a trembling breath, I stepped into the heart of the portal. The shadows seemed to embrace me, swirling around my body like a storm of memories and possibilities. Light fractured across the surfaces of the portal, reflecting pieces of me I had never seen, courage, vulnerability, longing, and hope all mingled together. A sudden jolt threw me forward, and I crashed into one of the reflections. Instead of glass, my hand passed through, and I felt something alive, pulsing beneath my fingers. A voice, deep and impossibly close, whispered, "Welcome, Daniel, to the point of no return. What you choose here will define everything you are and everything you will become." I froze, knowing that the next instant could either reshape me completely or erase the version of myself I had just begun to embrace. I stood frozen, hand still pressed against the pulsing reflection. It felt alive, almost breathing, and I could sense a strange energy radiating from it, something that seemed to understand every hidden corner of my mind. The shadows around me swirled violently, yet the portal remained steady, like a heartbeat I could follow. The tall figure's voice broke through the chaos, calm but unwavering. "This is where the rules end, Daniel. What you have hidden, what you have denied, it all comes to the surface now. You will either step through fully or remain fractured forever." I swallowed hard, the glowing key in my pocket warming against my skin, grounding me. Every fear I had carried for years rose up, mingling with a thrill I had never felt before. The reflections around me shifted, showing versions of myself that I both feared and longed to be. Confident, free, unapologetically me. A whisper rose from the pulsing reflection, soft but insistent. "Touch me. Step through. Accept every piece of who you are or turn back and remain invisible." I hesitated. My life, my family, the rules I had grown up with, they all seemed to press against me, pulling me in the opposite direction. But the part of me that had seen myself in the dress, the part that had tasted freedom for the first time, urged me forward. With a deep breath, I stepped fully into the reflection. The world fractured around me. Shadows and light collided, spinning me into a place I couldn't name. Memories, fears, desires, all of it rushed at me at once. I could feel the past I had lived and the future I might claim, all intertwining in a dizzying cascade. Then, in the chaos of shifting reflections, I heard a voice familiar, yet impossibly altered, whispering directly into my mind. "Welcome, Daniel. The life you've avoided is real, but it will demand everything. Are you ready to become yourself fully?" I froze, knowing that the next choice I made would not just change me, it would define every moment of my life from this point forward. The whirlwind of shadows and light began to calm, leaving me standing in a space that felt both familiar and utterly alien. Every reflection around me shimmered, showing fragments of myself I had never acknowledged. The boy I had been, the person I had longed to become, and versions I couldn't even name. The tall figure's voice resonated softly through the void. "You've stepped beyond the rules, Daniel. But freedom is not granted lightly. You must claim it fully, without hesitation or compromise." I swallowed hard, my chest tightening. The glowing key in my pocket seemed to pulse in rhythm with my heartbeat, a tangible reminder that this was not a dream. I had chosen this path, and now I had to live it. A mirror shifted in front of me, larger than the others, showing a version of myself that was confident, radiant, and undeniably alive. Its eyes locked with mine, and for the first time, I felt a connection, a promise that who I could be was real, if only I dared to accept it. A whisper rose from the mirror, wrapping around me. "Step forward, Daniel. Accept yourself fully, or remain trapped in the fragments of your old life forever." I hesitated. For a brief, terrifying moment, the weight of the household rules, the fear of judgment, and the uncertainty of the unknown pressed down on me. But the part of me that had longed to be free, the part that had felt alive in that dress, that had finally tasted authenticity, urged me onward. With one deliberate step, I moved toward the mirror. The surface rippled beneath my fingers, warm and pulsing. The reflections around me seemed to lean closer, encouraging me, daring me to commit completely. As I pressed my hand fully against the mirror, the reflection's lips parted, and it spoke in a voice that was mine, but stronger, clearer, more real than I had ever heard. "Step through, Daniel, and the person you are meant to be will finally emerge. But beware, the path forward will test everything you believe about yourself." I froze, knowing that the instant I stepped across this threshold, nothing would ever be the same again. I took a trembling breath, feeling the warmth of the mirror against my palm. The world around me had gone silent, leaving only the pulsing energy beneath my fingers and the steady rhythm of my own heartbeat. Every instinct screamed caution, yet a deeper, undeniable part of me urged forward. This was the moment I had been waiting for, whether I realized it or not. The tall figure's voice echoed softly, almost reverently. "Once you step through, Daniel, you cannot retreat. The rules of your old life have no hold here. Only the truth of who you are remains." I swallowed hard, my eyes locked with the reflection before me. It wasn't just me, it was me at my fullest, unguarded, unafraid, unashamed. The part of me I had kept hidden for years, the part that had thrilled at fabric and color and freedom, stared back with unwavering clarity. A whisper rose around me, low and insistent. "Step fully. Do not hesitate. Embrace yourself completely, or remain a shadow forever." I felt a surge of courage and fear collide. Everything I had suppressed, everything I had hidden even from myself, surged forward in a single, overwhelming wave. This was no longer about rules or family expectations or safety. It was about existence, identity, and finally claiming the life that had always been mine to live. With a final, resolute breath, I stepped into the mirror. The surface rippled and gave way like water, swallowing me into a vortex of light and shadow. Every sensation, every memory, every secret desire rushed over me at once. I could feel my past, my fears, and my dreams intertwining, reshaping me from the inside out. Then, in the center of the swirling light, a voice rang out, mine, yet impossibly different. "Welcome, Daniel. You've crossed into the life you were meant to live. But now the real trial begins, and the world will demand everything of you." I froze, knowing that the next moment would define not just who I was, but who I could ever become. The swirling light and shadows around me began to stabilize, leaving a strange, liminal space that was neither fully real nor fully imagined. My body felt different, lighter, more aware, as if every nerve and muscle had been rewired to notice everything I had ignored before. The tall figure stepped closer, its presence calm, yet commanding. "You've claimed your first step, Daniel," it said. "But claiming is not enough. You must now prove that you can live as yourself when the world resists. I looked down at my hands, still trembling, still tingling with the echo of the portal's energy. I felt a strange connection to the reflection I had just crossed into. It wasn't just an image anymore. It was a part of me, stronger and more certain than I had ever been. From the edges of the shadows, other forms began to appear, shapes of uncertainty, doubt, and fear I had carried my entire life. Each one loomed closer, whispering reminders of rules, expectations, and judgments I had long tried to obey. A voice, deep and resonant, echoed through the space. Every choice you make now will shape your identity. Every hesitation will be a test. Will you rise, Daniel, or will you let the old rules chain you still? I swallowed hard, feeling the weight of all my past fears pressing down. And yet, for the first time, I also felt clarity, a certainty that I could no longer ignore. The life I had glimpsed, the freedom, the authenticity was real, and it demanded action. Suddenly, one of the shadowy forms lunged forward, twisting and cracking like smoke, aiming directly at me. I froze, heart hammering, realizing that this was no longer just about courage. It was a confrontation with every part of myself I had hidden. And I knew, if I faltered now, everything I had just gained could be lost forever. The shadow lunged, its form twisting and writhing like smoke, yet I felt no fear, only a sharp, electrifying clarity. Every suppressed thought, every hidden desire, every fragment of who I had been came rushing to the surface. This was the moment of reckoning, the point where hiding was no longer an option. I raised my hand, instinctively, and the glowing key in my pocket pulsed with warmth, as if responding to my courage. The shadow paused midair, its twisting form flickering uncertainly. I realized then that this wasn't just an attack, it was a test, a measure of how fully I was willing to claim myself. The tall figure's voice cut through the tension, steady and unwavering. Do not falter, Daniel. Every part of yourself you have denied will rise, but only your resolve can turn them into strength. I drew a deep, steadying breath and stepped forward, eyes fixed on the shadow. I am not afraid, I said, voice firm, surprising even myself. I am who I am, every part of me, and I will not hide anymore. The shadow recoiled, splitting into smaller forms that swirled around me. But instead of attacking, they seemed to bend toward me, feeding into the pulsing energy of the key, merging with the reflections I had crossed into. A warmth spread through me, a strange, powerful sensation of completeness. For the first time, I felt whole, unafraid, fully present. The shadows were not enemies. They were pieces of myself I had finally acknowledged and claimed. As I stood there, the portal before me shimmered, revealing a new world beyond vivid, alive and unknown. A voice whispered, both familiar and commanding. Step forward, Daniel, but beware. The life ahead will challenge you in ways you cannot yet imagine. Are you ready to truly live as yourself? I froze, knowing that the next step would either complete my transformation or test me beyond anything I had ever faced. I stood at the edge of the portal, the new world shimmering before me like a living painting. Colors I had never seen, sounds I couldn't describe, and a sense of possibility so vast it made my chest ache. The shadows I had faced moments ago now lingered around me, not as threats, but as reminders of the fears and doubts I had conquered. The tall figure's voice resonated softly, almost like a guide. This is your threshold, Daniel. Beyond this point, the life you've imagined and the person you've become awaits. But nothing here is guaranteed. Every choice will shape who you truly are. I glanced back at the familiar world I had left behind, the house, the rules, the quiet life I had followed for years. It all seemed small now, like a faded photograph. My heart pounded, not from fear, but from anticipation. The identity I had claimed in the mirror, in the shadows, and in my own courage demanded I step forward. A whisper rose from the portal, soft but insistent. Step fully into yourself, Daniel, or remain in the shadow of what could have been. I took a deep breath, feeling the warmth of the key in my pocket, the grounding force that reminded me who I was and who I could become. Each step toward the portal felt like shedding another layer of the old life, the old rules, the old fears. Just as my foot touched the threshold, the portal shimmered violently, and a figure emerged from the light familiar, yet completely transformed. It spoke, voice clear and commanding. "Welcome, Daniel, but know this. The world you're about to enter will demand everything. To live fully, you must be ready to face not only who you are, but who you have always been afraid to become." I froze, knowing that the next step would define not just this moment, but the rest of my life. I hesitated at the threshold, the transformed figure blocking my path or perhaps guiding it. Its presence was overwhelming, radiating a power that made the air vibrate, yet there was something familiar in the stance, the way it regarded me. It wasn't threatening, but it demanded acknowledgement, a recognition of the self I had only just begun to accept. The portal pulsed around us, casting shifting lights and shadows across the space. Each flicker seemed to echo my heartbeat, every vibration a reminder that the life I had stepped into was not idle or safe. It was alive, aware, and waiting for me to commit fully. "You've faced shadows," the figure said, voice calm but resonant. "You've touched the truth of who you are. But here, the world will test you in ways the mirror never could. Will you stand, or will you falter?" I swallowed hard, gripping the glowing key in my pocket as if it could anchor me to courage itself. The memories of my old life, the house, the rules, the whispers of doubt pressed against me, but the sensation of freedom, of claiming my identity, surged stronger. With a slow, deliberate breath, I stepped fully into the light, leaving behind the comfort of the familiar. The air shimmered, and for a moment, I felt weightless, suspended between what I had been and what I was becoming. Then, the figure extended a hand, not to pull me back, but to guide me forward, and a new voice, layered and echoing, spoke directly in my mind. "Daniel, the real journey begins now. Every step will reshape you. Are you prepared to face what comes next, knowing there is no turning back?" I froze, realizing that stepping forward would not just continue my transformation, it would define the very core of who I was and who I could become. I stood frozen for a moment, the figure's hand extended, the portal's light swirling around me like liquid fire. Every instinct screamed caution, but a deeper part of me, the part that had felt alive for the first time in the mirror, the dress, the shadows, urged me forward. I took a tentative step. The moment my foot crossed the threshold, the air shifted. The light wrapped around me, warm and electric, and the world behind me, the house, the rules, the old life, faded like mist. For the first time, I felt unbound, untethered, fully present. The figure's hand remained outstretched, and I realized it was not an enemy. It was a guide, a gatekeeper to the life I had been avoiding. "Every challenge you face beyond this point," it said, voice deep and calm, "will not break you if you remain true. But every choice you hesitate on will shape you in ways you cannot control." I clenched the key tighter in my pocket, feeling its pulse sync with my heartbeat. I was no longer the boy who hid in shadows, afraid of the rules. I was someone new, someone fully myself, but I knew that the true test had only just begun. The portal stabilized, revealing a landscape unlike anything I had ever imagined. Colors danced in impossible patterns, shadows moved with intent, and a horizon stretched endlessly, filled with both promise and danger. From the edge of the portal, a voice boomed, layered with authority and mystery. "Daniel, welcome to the world you've chosen. To thrive here, you must face not only the truths you know, but the ones you have yet to discover. Are you ready to step forward, fully and without doubt?" I froze, knowing that the next step would not just define this journey, it would define every moment of the life I was about to claim. I hesitated, heart pounding, as the voice echoed through the strange, shimmering landscape. The ground beneath me felt alive, shifting subtly with each heartbeat, and the air carried a hum that resonated deep in my chest. This world was nothing like the house I had left behind here. Every choice seemed amplified, every movement consequential. The figure's hand remained extended, steady and unwavering. Its gaze, calm and piercing, seemed to see through every layer I had built over the years, the fear, the hesitation, the parts one had long hidden even from myself. "Daniel," it said softly, yet every word vibrated through me. "The moment you step forward, you leave everything behind that confined you. The life ahead will test your courage, your identity, and your resolve. Are you prepared to embrace it fully?" I felt the weight of the glowing key in my pocket, a tangible reminder that I had already taken the first steps toward claiming myself. And yet, the enormity of what lay beyond the portal pressed down on me, a mixture of awe and fear that made every instinct scream to retreat. A whisper rose from the horizon, soft but insistent. "Step forward, Daniel, or remain forever a shadow of who you could be." I drew a deep, shuddering breath. For the first time in my life, I felt no hesitation, only clarity. Every fear, every rule I had obeyed, every hidden desire, all of it had led me to this point. With a final, deliberate step, I moved into the portal. The moment my foot crossed fully, the landscape twisted violently, and I found myself standing before a figure cloaked entirely in light and shadow. It spoke, voice layered with power and authority. "Daniel, to live here is to confront every truth you have avoided. Only by embracing all of it will you survive, and only by surviving will you truly become yourself." I froze, knowing that what came next would test not just my courage, but the very essence of my identity. The figure before me radiated a strange energy, neither entirely threatening nor entirely comforting. Its presence filled the world around me, bending the light and shadows in ways that made the ground beneath my feet seem unreal. I realized immediately that this was no ordinary challenge. This was the embodiment of everything I had feared and longed for. "You've stepped into the life you chose," the figure said, voice echoing in layers, as if coming from everywhere at once. "But choice alone is not enough. You must confront every hidden fear, every desire you've suppressed, every truth you've avoided, or you will remain incomplete." I swallowed hard, feeling the weight of every secret I had carried. The glowing key in my pocket pulsed in response, almost as if it recognized the magnitude of what lay ahead. Every instinct screamed caution, yet the part of me that had tasted freedom urged forward. Around me, the landscape shifted again. Shadows lengthened and intertwined with streams of light, forming shapes that reflected my past, my mistakes, and the parts of myself I had denied. Each figure whispered, called, or beckoned me toward choices I had never dared make. A whisper rose above all others, soft and insistent. "Daniel, only by embracing all of your self-fear, courage, weakness, strength will you pass through what comes next. Will you rise or fall?" I took a slow, steadying breath, feeling the weight of my past and the pull of my future converge. For the first time, I understood that stepping forward here was not just about survival, it was about claiming every piece of who I truly was. The figure extended its hand toward me, and the shadows around us twisted violently, forming a swirling vortex of light and darkness. A voice my own, yet infinitely stronger, whispered directly into my mind. "Step fully into yourself, Daniel, or the life waiting for you will slip away forever." I froze, knowing that the next action I took would determine not only this moment, but the person I would become. The vortex swirled violently around me, a living storm of shadows and light that seemed to pulse with intent. My heart raced as I realized that this was no longer just a test, it was the very forge of my identity. Every step I had taken, every rule I had broken, every secret I had acknowledged had led me to this point. The figure's hand remained extended, unwavering, yet the energy emanating from it made the air hum and vibrate. "Daniel," it said, voice layered and commanding, "to step forward is to claim yourself fully. To hesitate is to remain fractured, lost between who you were and who you could be." I felt the glow of the key in my pocket, warm and insistent, anchoring me to courage I didn't know I possessed. The reflections around me shimmered, each one a version of myself, confident, vulnerable, radiant, and terrified, all waiting for acknowledgement. A whisper rose above the chaos, threading through my mind. Embrace every part of yourself, or retreat and remain invisible forever. I drew a deep, steadying breath. The old fears, the household rules, the judgments I had long internalized, all of them pressed against me. Yet, the exhilaration, the certainty that I had glimpsed the person I was meant to become, surged stronger. With a decisive step, I moved into the vortex. The shadows coiled around me, light fractured into brilliant shards, and I felt myself being pulled into something beyond comprehension. Memories, desires, fears all collided in a dazzling, overwhelming cascade. Then, in the heart of the swirling storm, a voice echoed mine, yet impossibly clearer and stronger than ever. Daniel, the life you have chosen awaits, but the first trial is here. Only by facing it fully will you survive and truly become yourself. I froze, knowing that the next instant would define not just my journey, but the very essence of who I was meant to be. The storm of shadows and light intensified around me, twisting and writhing as if alive. Every heartbeat felt amplified, every breath caught between fear and exhilaration. I realized that this was no longer just a test of courage, it was a trial of my very identity. The figure before me stepped closer, its presence solid yet ethereal. "Daniel," it said, voice calm but layered with authority, "the trial begins now. You will face what you have hidden, what you have denied, and what you have feared. Only by confronting all of it can you move forward." I glanced at the swirling reflections around me. Each one mirrored a different version of myself, the boy who obeyed the rules, the person who longed for freedom, the shadow of fear I had carried for years, and the radiant self I had only glimpsed in the dress, in the mirror, in the courage I had just begun to claim. A whisper threaded through the storm. "Choose yourself fully, Daniel. Do not hold back. Every hesitation will be a test you may not survive." I swallowed hard, the key in my pocket warming as if responding to my resolve. I realized in that moment that stepping forward wasn't just an act, it was a declaration. I could no longer hide. I could no longer retreat. With a trembling but determined step, I moved toward the center of the storm. Light and shadow collided violently around me, and the reflections twisted, merging into a single, clear image, me, fully myself, unafraid and alive. As I reached out to touch the image, the storm exploded in a sudden burst of brilliance. A new voice, deeper and more commanding than any before, spoke directly into my mind. "Daniel, to survive the life you've chosen, you must confront the ultimate truth. Are you ready to see what you have been hiding from yourself all these years?" I froze, knowing that the next revelation could either complete my transformation or shatter everything I had just claimed. The brilliance of the storm engulfed me, the light and shadows intertwining so tightly that I could barely tell where one ended and the other began. My hand hovered over the reflection of myself, trembling, yet I felt an undeniable pull forward. This was at the moment that would decide everything. The deep, commanding voice echoed again, reverberating inside my skull. "Daniel, the ultimate truth awaits. Only by facing it fully will you survive and claim the life you've been running toward. Will you step forward, or will you remain a shadow of who you could be?" I swallowed hard. My thoughts flashed through years of hiding, of obeying rules, of stifling the parts of myself that longed to be seen. I remembered the first dress, the mirror, the taste of freedom I had felt for the first time. All of it converged into one undeniable certainty. I could not turn back now. The reflections around me pulsed violently, twisting into faces I knew intimately, some kind, some mocking, all challenging me to confront every piece of my hidden self. The key in my pocket burned against my fingers, as if urging me onward. With a steadying breath, I stepped fully into the center of the storm. The world fractured around me. Shadows stretched and recoiled, memories surged like crashing waves, and for a moment, I felt my mind and body stretch to their limits. Then, through the chaos, a single figure emerged from the maelstrom, a version of myself I had never seen before, confident, radiant, unafraid, and impossibly real. It spoke in a voice that was both mine and not mine. Daniel, this is the moment of truth. To move forward, you must embrace everything you have hidden, every fear you have ignored, and every desire you have denied. Only then will you truly become yourself. I froze, knowing that the next step would not just transform me, it would define the person I would be forever. The figure stood before me, radiant and impossibly vivid, every movement precise yet fluid. Its gaze held mine, sharp and penetrating, as if it could see every secret I had buried, every doubt I had nurtured, and every longing I had denied. The storm of shadows and light around us seemed to quiet for a moment, as if the world itself was holding its breath. "You've come far, Daniel," the figure said, voice resonating deep within me. "But the final step is the hardest. You must confront not only who you are, but who you have feared you could become. Only by accepting it all will you survive here, and only by surviving will you truly be free." I swallowed hard, feeling the glowing key pulse like a heartbeat in my pocket. Memories of my old life rules, fears, and constraints pressed against me, yet beneath it all surged a clarity I had never known. This was the life I had glimpsed in the mirror, the life I had felt in the dress, the life I had begun to claim for myself. The figure extended a hand, inviting me forward. "Step fully, Daniel. Embrace every part of yourself. The choice is yours, but hesitation will cost you everything." I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of all my past experiences and hidden truths converging in that single moment. I could retreat, return to the shadows of my old life, or I could step forward and claim every piece of who I truly was. As my foot crossed toward the figure, the storm flared violently one last time, and a voice, layered and omnipresent, echoed through the air and into my mind. "Daniel, once you embrace the truth fully, there is no turning back. Are you ready to see what lies beyond the last threshold?" I froze, realizing that the next step would either complete my transformation or challenge everything I thought I knew about myself. I stood at the edge, heart hammering, every nerve alight with anticipation and fear. The figure's hand remained extended, the light from the portal casting long, shifting shadows across the swirling landscape. The voice, layered and omnipresent, echoed in my mind. "Daniel, the truth you have avoided all your life waits. Will you step forward, or remain in the shadow of what you could be?" I swallowed hard, feeling the glow of the key in my pocket like a pulse syncing with my own heartbeat. Memories of years spent hiding the rules, the silence, the fear crashed over me, but so did memories of small moments of courage. The first time I tried a dress, the mirror that reflected a new possibility, the whispers of freedom I had finally dared to acknowledge. I realized then that stepping forward was not just an act, it was a declaration. I had already glimpsed who I could be. Now I had to claim it. With a deep, deliberate breath, I lifted my foot and stepped fully into the portal. The air around me shimmered violently, shadows twisting, light fracturing, and every part of me felt pulled apart and stitched back together simultaneously. My mind and body were flooded with sensations I had never experienced, memories I had buried, desires I had ignored, all converging in a single, overwhelming moment. Then, through the chaos, a voice familiar, intimate, yet impossibly powerful spoke directly to me. "Daniel, the world you have entered will challenge everything you are. Only by facing the ultimate truth will you survive, and only by surviving will you finally become who you were meant to be." I froze, knowing that the next instant would define not just my life, but the very essence of who I was. The swirling storm of shadows and light began to settle, revealing a space both alien and intimate. I could feel the energy of this new world pulsing beneath my feet, vibrating through me in a way that made every nerve feel alive. My heartbeat synced with the rhythm of the place, steady but charged with anticipation. The figure before me, radiant, imposing, yet oddly familiar, stepped closer. "You've crossed the threshold, Daniel," it said, voice layered and commanding. "But crossing is only the beginning. To survive here, you must confront every part of yourself that you've hidden, feared, or denied. Only then can you truly claim this life." I swallowed hard, gripping the glowing key in my pocket. The reflections I had passed through, the shadows I had faced, all seemed to converge now, pressing into me with a weight I could no longer ignore. Every hesitation, every doubt, every fragment of fear was here, and I realized I had to embrace it all or be consumed by it. A whisper rose, threading through the air, insistent and almost melodic. "Step fully, Daniel, or remain a shadow forever." I drew a deep breath, feeling the courage I had cultivated, the freedom I had glimpsed, and the identity I had begun to claim. Every fiber of my being screamed forward. I could retreat, but I knew I would never forgive myself if I did. With a final, determined step, I advanced toward the figure. The light around us intensified, the shadows coiling and twisting like living serpents, and I felt myself pulled deeper into the essence of this new world. Then, just as I reached the figure, a sudden voice boomed, echoing from everywhere and nowhere. "Daniel, your final trial begins now. Every fear, every desire, every hidden truth will be laid bare. Are you ready to face what you have always avoided?" I froze, knowing that the next step would not just test me, it would determine who I would become forever. I stood frozen, heart hammering, as the voice reverberated through the strange, pulsating space. The figure before me remained calm, its presence steady amidst the swirling chaos of shadows and light. Every instinct in me screamed to hesitate, to retreat to the safety of the life I had left behind, but the part of me that had tasted freedom, that had glimpsed who I could be, pushed me forward relentlessly. "You've come far, Daniel," the figure said, voice layered and commanding. "But the real test begins now. You will face the truths you have hidden, the fears you have denied, and the desires you have buried. Only by embracing them fully will you step into the life you are meant to live." I felt the glowing key in my pocket pulse warmly, as if affirming my resolve. Around me, the shadows and reflections began to shift, coalescing into forms that mirrored every fragment of myself: the timid boy, the curious teen, the secret dreamer, and the part of me I had longed to be in silence. A whisper threaded through the air, soft but insistent. "Step forward, Daniel, or remain trapped in the shadow of your old life." I swallowed hard and drew a deep breath. Every hesitation, every fear, every rule I had ever obeyed surged before me, but beneath it all, the clarity of who I truly was called me onward. With determination, I stepped fully toward the figure. The storm of light and shadow intensified, pulling me into its heart, and I felt my identity being tested, stretched, and reforged in ways I could barely comprehend. As I entered the heart of the storm, the figure's eyes glowed with a strange intensity, and a voice my own, yet impossibly clear and commanding, spoke directly into my mind. "Daniel, the final choice is here. Will you embrace every part of yourself, or will you retreat and lose everything you fought to claim?" I froze, knowing that the next step would define not just this journey, but the essence of who I was meant to become. The storm of shadows and light roared around me, a living, breathing force that seemed to test every fiber of my being. My pulse raced, my breath caught, and yet, amid the chaos, a strange calm settled in my chest, the certainty that this was the path I had been seeking, the life I had been too afraid to claim. The figure before me remained unmoving, its gaze fixed and unwavering. "Daniel," it said, voice both soft and omnipotent, "the threshold is here. You will face what you have avoided for your entire life. Every fear, every hidden desire, every truth you have denied will rise before you. Only by embracing all of it can you move forward." I swallowed hard, gripping the key in my pocket, as if it were the anchor holding me to reality. The reflections around me shifted violently, each one showing a different version of myself, some confident, some fearful, some radiant, some broken. A whisper rose through the storm, insistent and precise. Step fully into yourself, Daniel, or remain trapped in the shadow of who you could have been. I drew in a deep, shuddering breath, feeling every fear and every spark of courage converge. There was no turning back. This was my moment to claim myself fully, to step into the life I had glimpsed in secret for so long. With resolve, I moved forward, into the storm, letting the light and shadows engulf me. My body felt weightless, my mind alive with memories and possibilities, every hidden part of me converging into a single, undeniable identity. Then, at the center of the storm, the figure spoke again, voice layered and commanding. Daniel, what you face now will challenge everything you thought you knew about yourself. Step forward, and there is no return. I froze, realizing that the next step would either cement my transformation or shatter everything I had just begun to claim.